She helped a beggar every morning. Years later, he returned as the man who saved her life. Welcome back to Soul Rise Stories. Please take a second to like this video, subscribe to our channel and turn on your notification bell. Every click helps us share more powerful stories of hope, sacrifice, and triumph. Together, we're not just telling stories, we're keeping dreams alive. The morning sun had barely stretched its light over the busy city of Lagos when Amelia Brooks stepped out of her small apartment. She walked with quiet purpose, a soft nylon bag swinging gently at her side. Inside were 2 loaves of bread, one for her family and the other for a man most people called the beggar by the kiosk. Every morning, Amelia saw him sitting in the same spot beside the cracked yellow wall near the bus stop. His beard was uneven, his hands rough, and his grey beanie looked like it had seen many storms. Most commuters walked past him as if he were invisible, careful not to make eye contact. To them, he was part of the scenery, one of many reminders that life in the city was merciless. But Amelia always stopped. She handed him the bread with both hands and smiled as if she were offering a gift of gold. "Eat well today," she would say softly. "Tomorrow will be better." The man, whose name she didn't yet know, always looked up at her with watery gratitude. His voice was faint, but his blessings were full. "May God remember you, Ma. May he repay you when the world forgets," Amelia always chuckled lightly and waved off his words. "I have enough blessings already." Her kindness was quiet, simple, and unannounced. She never told anyone about it. She didn't do it for attention, only because her heart refused to look away from hunger. At home, her husband, Thomas Brooks, didn't understand it. He was a man who carried the world on his shoulders, driving a commercial bus through Lagos traffic every day, returning home with sweat and exhaustion clinging to him like dust. Their small 1-bedroom apartment was cramped, but it was theirs. Every naira counted, every loaf mattered. One evening, Thomas sat by the table counting coins while Amelia wrapped another loaf in brown paper. "You're feeding that beggar again tomorrow?" he asked without looking up. Amelia nodded gently. "Yes. He'll be hungry." Thomas sighed, his tone frustrated but weary. "And what about us? Sometimes I think you forget we're the ones barely surviving." Amelia smiled faintly, not offended. "We'll survive because we still care. That's what keeps us human." He looked at her long enough to realize she wasn't joking. "You think kindness pays rent?" "No," she said quietly. "But cruelty doesn't either." Their 7-year-old daughter Lily sat on the floor sketching with a pencil stub. She looked up at her parents, her big brown eyes curious. "Mummy," she asked innocently, "why do you give food to that man? Doesn't he have a wife?" Amelia knelt beside her and smoothed the child's braids. "Maybe he did. Maybe life took her away. Sometimes life takes more than we think it can." Lily nodded slowly, absorbing more than her mother realized. Weeks passed. Each morning, the same ritual continued. Amelia's job as a receptionist in a small printing firm barely paid enough for bills, but she never skipped her stop at the kiosk. Rain or shine, she always handed over that loaf. One stormy morning, as she crouched under her umbrella to offer the bread, the man looked up with eyes that shimmered through the rain. "Madame," he said softly, "you don't know what your kindness means. You give as if I'm someone. You are someone," Amelia replied. "You're alive." He nodded, trembling slightly. "Then let heaven remember you when the world forgets." She smiled, not realizing how prophetic those words would one day become. Trouble began quietly. First came the accident. One of Thomas's buses collided with another vehicle on the expressway. The driver survived, but the damage was irreparable. The bus was seized by the police pending investigation. Days later, the second bus broke down completely, leaving only one still running. Expenses grew. The landlord raised rent. Amelia's small salary went to school fees and food. Then, The final blow. Thomas fell sick. Stress and ulcers, the doctor said. He had to stop driving for a while. Their savings melted like ice in sun. The once cheerful home turned silent. The laughter that used to fill the kitchen now lived in memory. One night, Amelia sat awake watching the ceiling fan spin lazily. Thomas stirred beside her. "You should stop feeding that beggar," he murmured, half asleep. "God helps those who help themselves." Amelia smiled sadly in the dark. "And maybe God helps us through those we help." The next month, a red-stamped eviction notice appeared on their door. The landlord, a portly man with a gold chain around his neck, arrived with 2 policemen. "I've given you enough time," he said sharply. "If you can't pay, you leave." By afternoon, their belongings lay on the sidewalk. An old mattress, a small fan, a tin of pots. The neighbors watched through half-open curtains, whispering, "Isn't that the woman who feeds the beggar? Look at her now, feeding hunger instead of saving her home." Amelia heard them. She said nothing. She only lifted Lily onto her hip and whispered into her ear, "We'll be okay, baby." God never forgets the hands that give, but as the sky darkened, even she wondered if her faith was foolish. That was when the black SUV stopped. Its tinted window lowered slowly, and a man stepped out, tall, composed, wearing a navy blue suit that reflected the last light of day. He looked at Amelia as though he'd seen a ghost from a dream. "Excuse me," he said gently. "Are you Mrs. Brooks?" She hesitated. "Yes." The man's expression softened. "Do you remember me?" She shook her head. "I'm sorry, sir. I don't think so." He smiled faintly. "Every morning near the kiosk, you gave a man bread." Her breath caught. "You?" He nodded. "My name is Adrian Wells. I wasn't truly homeless, though I looked it. I had lost everything. My business collapsed. My investors abandoned me. I sat at that bus stop for weeks, too ashamed to tell anyone who I was. You fed me when I couldn't even feed my pride." Amelia stared at him, the pieces falling together. You were that man?" "Yes," Adrian said softly. "And I promised myself that if I ever stood again I would find you." He looked at her scattered belongings. "Where are you going tonight?" "I don't know," she admitted. Adrian turned to his driver. "Help them load everything into the car." Thomas, still in disbelief, protested. "Sir, you don't have to." Adrian raised a hand. "I insist. You once fed me when you didn't have to. Now it's my turn." That night, the Brooks family slept in a comfortable guest house. The air smelled faintly of jasmine soap and new sheets. For the first time in months, Amelia slept without fear of morning. The next day, Adrian invited them to his office, a tall glass building downtown that shimmered under sunlight. The words Wells Logistics and Investments Limited stretched across the entrance. Inside, employees greeted him with respect. Amelia felt out of place, standing in her worn skirt, holding Lily's hand. Adrian turned to her and smiled warmly. "When I rebuilt my company, I built it with a promise that the woman who gave me bread would never lack again." He opened his laptop, revealing a folder titled The Daily Bread Foundation. "We support families going through hardship. Mrs. Brooks, I'd like you to coordinate our community projects. You have what money can't buy: compassion." Amelia's eyes widened. "Sir, I don't have qualifications." He interrupted softly. "Kindness is qualification enough." He also offered Thomas a managerial role in one of his warehouses. "You've spent your life driving. Now help me manage those who do." For the first time in years, Thomas's handshake carried confidence. Weeks later, the Brooks family moved into a modest apartment near the city park. It wasn't luxury, but it was peace. The walls smelled of fresh paint. The floor shone. Amelia hung a small frame above the dining table. It read, "Doing good is never wasted." Every morning she packed food for outreach visits, taking Lily along. They visited widows, orphanages, and struggling mothers. "We give because we can," she always told her daughter. "And because we remember." 6 months later, Adrian launched a new initiative called Amelia's Daily Bread. The event was held in a bright hall filled with cameras, journalists, and guests. A banner displayed Amelia's smiling face handing bread to a child. When she stepped to the podium, her voice trembled, but her eyes shone. "I'm not a celebrity. I'm not special. I'm just someone who gave bread to a stranger. And that stranger became the reason my family stands here today. Goodness never dies. It just finds its way home." Applause thundered through the hall. Adrian clapped the loudest, his eyes glistening. That evening, Amelia returned to the old bus stop. The kiosk was gone, replaced by a small shop, but the place felt sacred. She placed 2 loaves of bread on the bench and whispered, "For whoever needs it next." The wind stirred her skirt. She closed her eyes, grateful for the strange beauty of full circles. But life wasn't finished teaching its lessons. One rainy night, Adrian's car lost control on the highway and crashed. The news spread fast. Business magnate Adrian Wells hospitalized after a severe accident. Amelia dropped everything and rushed to the hospital. When she saw him through the glass, hooked to tubes and machines, her heart broke. For 3 days she barely left his side. Nurses came and went, whispering about the woman who won't move. On the 4th day, his eyes fluttered open, his lips curved faintly. "You came," he murmured. Tears welled in her eyes. "You didn't think I'd forget you, did you?" He smiled weakly. "Now we're even." She laughed softly through tears. "No, Adrian. We were never keeping score." Months later, when he recovered, a journalist interviewed them together for a feature titled "The Bread That Came Back." "Mrs. Brooks," the reporter asked, "how does it feel to have your kindness return to you this way?" Amelia looked thoughtful. "It doesn't feel like a return. It feels like a reminder that you never lose anything by doing good." Adrian added, "When I lost everything, her kindness was the only wealth I had. So when I rebuilt, I built with gratitude under Amelia's guidance. The foundation expanded beyond the city. Food banks opened in small towns, skill programs for widows launched in rural communities, and thousands of families received help. People everywhere began sharing her story, how one loaf of bread given with love became the seed of a movement. At award ceremonies, Amelia never dressed extravagantly. She preferred simple gowns, modest jewelry, and always carried a gentle smile. When asked for her secret, she always said, "Consistency. Compassion is not an event, it's a habit." One late evening, Amelia stood by her balcony overlooking the glowing city. Lily, now a teenager, was downstairs handing food to a young boy selling bananas by the gate. The boy smiled shyly and said, "Thank you, Auntie. One day I'll help you too." Amelia's eyes misted. She turned her face toward the horizon and whispered, "Goodness never dies. It just changes hands." The city hummed below her, alive with horns, laughter, and light. Somewhere, in a corner of that vast city, another hungry soul was being fed by someone she'd never meet. But that didn't matter. What mattered was that kindness had continued its journey, just as she once carried it, just as Adrian once carried it, and just as Lily would carry it next. And for the first time in a long while, Amelia felt completely at peace. She looked at the stars and smiled, her heart whispering the words that had guided her all along. Do good. Not because the world is kind, but because you are. Goodness may leave your hand, but it never leaves your destiny.